All right, so Kyle, AA0Z is going to be our presenter. He is a YouTuber, and that's really about all I know. So Kyle, I'll let you introduce yourself and start the presentation.
Hello, welcome, and glad to be here. I don't see Steve, WG0AT, is he back there?
He just left.
He just left. I wanted to say hello to him. He was my inspiration many, many years ago on Soda and YouTube and watching Rooster and Peanut climbing up the mountains. So I wanted to say hello. So if he comes back, please let me know, or if you see him later, please tell him that he was an early inspiration to me many, many years ago watching his videos on YouTube. So how many people with the raise of hands has heard about Node-RED? Oh, a few. All right, very good. Well, this is going to be a presentation that I actually gave in Spokane, Washington, a couple of weeks ago to the DXCC convention, and I kind of revamped 4 or 5 presentations and put it into one. So hopefully you'll get something out of it. I really don't have any info about myself other than I've been a ham since '95. I've dabbled in about everything: Soda, POTA, digital, HF. I'm in the process of learning CW. I'm about 3 years in, so I'm a relatively new CW operator, and it's renewed or sparked another interest in the hobby. I wanted another way to contest. I'm a big contester, and I'd like to kind of broaden my horizons in contesting, so CW seemed like the logical thing. So having fun in that. So let me start the presentation or the slideshow here. Hang on, I gotta share my screen here first. Share screen. Let's see, it's screen number 3 here. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, good deal. I'm gonna get my windows here so I can kind of see everyone and pin the audience here so I can see. Let's see, how do I do this? All right, it's just gonna have to do. All right. So Node-RED. So what is Node-RED? Node-RED is a program. It was developed by IBM in 2013, and 3.1 is the latest of this presentation. It's basically built on JavaScript, which is an open source programming language. And Node-RED was developed for Internet of Things. So, you know, connecting your washer to your dryer and your TV to your microwave, to talk to machine-to-machine machine-to-machine communication. We have adopted it from that type of communication and brought it into the ham radio world. Whenever the software developers were taking a look at all of the weird things that Node-RED was doing, they thought ham radio was the weirdest of what it was being used for. So we got that prize of, you're doing what with it? The programming and the dashboard is all in a web browser, so you can run this in your web browser on your laptop, on your computer. I would suggest that you get a dedicated machine like a Raspberry Pi to run the back end of it, and it's very easy to get that back end up and running. Runs on anything, so if you want to run it on your laptop or a computer, you can do that. It runs on Macs, Linux, Raspberry Pis. Like I said, suggestion that you get a Raspberry Pi, even an old Raspberry Pi will be able to run this. And what it does is it hides all of that code that you had to learn a long time ago in Python or Perl or PHP or whatever you programmed in, like how to connect an Ethernet jack. You had to like write it from scratch. Well, now it's basically these nodes that have these configuration things in them that are already configured, and it puts it in layman's terms on how to connect things. So that's an example flow, and I'll show you what this consists of. That is an example flow of something in Node-RED, and then you can build something on the right-hand side that looks like a dashboard to control and do command and control and statuses of all your devices in your shack. Okay, but I'm not a programmer. Guess what? I'm not one either. I don't program for a living. I never did. I took one programming class in college, and it was Pascal, and that was it. Just to get a credit for it. So if I can program in a Node-RED, you can too. You just need basic common skills and logic. So if you're trying to get to an end goal, like you're trying to get frequency information out of your Elecraft K3, basically you inject something into the K3 and something gets ejected out of the K3 into Node-RED, and you basically need to parse that information to find what value is the band information. So it's very easy to put these things together and to put the programming together. Once you figure out how to use a debug node and see what actually is being extracted, then you can literally go through line by line and go, oh, well, that's the piece of information that I want, and then be able to extract that out. It's very easy. Like I said, the pre-programmed nodes do all the heavy lifting. There's many ready to go flows. So you don't have to do this from scratch. The great thing is we've got a Google I/O group that's about 1,500 people strong, and they have written flows for almost every large manufacturer and a very popular piece of equipment. So you don't have to do that heavy lifting. You can literally put your stuff in the spin up an instance of Node-RED, import a bunch of flows that somebody has already done, and be up and running within a couple of hours. So it's not you're not starting from scratch. Okay. Again, if you get stuck, there's that Groups IO. There's stuff on the web. The Groups IO ham radio, Node-RED for ham radio is a great resource. We have a lot of fun over there, and there's a lot of threads on different pieces of equipment. And like I said, debug nodes are your best friend. So I'm going to show you how to use a debug node. So what can you control with Node-RED? Anything, almost anything that's got a serial USB or Ethernet input or output. If it doesn't have an input or output, it's kind of hard to get information in or out of it. Most radios are controllable with the ham lib, or if you've got a flex, that is native. So we've written a bunch of nodes. Actually, Stephen Hauser has written a bunch of nodes to integrate with the Flex 6000. But because you don't have a Flex, doesn't mean you can't run this. Even if you have a weird radio that you cannot get connected, or there's not a flow for it, you can still control your amplifier, your rotators, your bandpass filters, your satellite station, any of that stuff that has input or output can be controlled. So amplifiers, tuners, rotors, antenna switches, relays, antenna disconnects, power supplies, home automation devices, like it's native program for weather stations. So why do you want to use Node-RED? So set yourself in your shack and think of all the things that you have to do to move from 40 meters CW to 20 meters single sideband with an amplifier and pointing from, California to New York. What do you have to do? What are the things that you have to do? I bet you anything that I could probably do all of those commands with one click of the mouse in Node-RED. So it literally eliminates errors. It gives you alarms that you can see whenever, like, your SWR is out of spec, or your fan on your radio is going haywire, or your amplifier is hot that you need to cool it down. It can give you all of those alarms. It does command and control, obviously. Real-time feedback, like I said, it will tell you exactly what's going on with your shack. And then also, the greatest thing for me as a contester is it puts all of that information in one monitor. So whenever I contest, I've got a setup here, and I've got my Node-RED setting in one screen, and it's telling me everything that I need to look at and monitor with my shack in one location. I don't have to look around for my amplifier over here and my rotator over there and my relays over there. I can see all the statuses in one location. So now we're getting into the nitty gritty here. So how does this all connect? So you've got the Raspberry Pi down there at the bottom. That's the brains of the situation. So then you've got that bus that basically is just, is it Ethernet? Is it serial? Is it USB? It doesn't really matter. It's an input or an output. And let's just go around the room here on the power. So you've got that Astron power supply over on the left-hand side. That switch there that looks like a power strip is a digital loggers relay. That thing plugs into Ethernet, or it's got wireless. You can see the wireless adapter there, and it's got 8 switchable relays, AC relays. And basically, you can turn your power on and off, not by the front button of the power supply, but turning the Astron power supply on and then plugging the power into that digital loggers and controlling all of the power through the relay through Node-RED on that digital loggers power strip. So that's how I've got a remote system, and that's how I turn the power on and off to all of the things. Then you've got a K3, K3S, or a K4. That is, you can connect that by serial. Maybe you've got an expert amp that you can plug in Ethernet. Maybe you've got a Palstar tuner. That's a serial device. These Paradan Coax disconnects are awesome. If you don't have one, I highly suggest you look one of these up. Basically, it's a antenna disconnect that whenever you apply 12 volts to it, it connects the antennas. Whenever you disconnect or whenever you remove power, it disconnects the coax. So if you've got something that you want to, maybe you're out and there's a storm blowing through and you forgot to disconnect your antenna, well, guess what? You could probably use Node-RED to get into your shack remotely and disconnect the antennas, so you've got some type of separation between your antennas and your radio. Antenna switches. So Array Solutions, the EA4TX boxes are very compatible. Then coming back down around to the lower left-hand corner, you got some bandpass filters that usually are switched in series by relays. Ethernet, RS-232 to Ethernet. So if you want to put some RS-232 devices on Ethernet, those USR N540s are really cool devices. They're really inexpensive. I think like a 4-port is like $100. So that's a cool device. Then you've got obviously the Raspberry Pi. And then that Km-Tronics IP relay module, that thing plugs into Ethernet and gives you 8 normally open, normally closed relays that you can control. It's got a web page embedded in it, but you can control it through Node-RED. So if you're looking for something to control relays remotely, that's an option. And then a whole slew of rotators. PST Rotator has got an interface to Node-RED. So if you use PST Rotator, or if you just use N1MM to point, or HRD Deluxe, you can interface that into Node-RED also. So some radio connections. So the Flex is native. Steven has created a node for that. So that's kind of the easy one. The Elecraft or anything that talks serial, there's a serial node that you can drag over to your palette or your workspace and configure that to talk to your radio. If you don't have anything that's TCP or serial, Hamlib is, you probably have used Hamlib whenever you configured FLDigi. That is a program that it uses to do cat control. So, and there's some APIs that you can interface in with Node-RED from Hamlib, and some people have done quite a bit of programming to interface Hamlib to like the ICOM series 7300 and the 7610, 7310, 7610. Anyway, the ICOM and Yaesu are have got some control flows that you might want to take a look at. So I'm just going to run through some sample dashboards. So there's two things here. There's the programming of the flows, and then there's the dashboards. And I'm going to show you the difference between the two. But these are just some sample dashboards that to get your creative juices going on what you can do with Node-RED. Here's I call that the Fruity Pebbles version of Node-RED with all the colors. That's Alan Blind. He lives up in Michigan. He's a major contributor to the Node-RED mailing list. They've got another one over here on the right-hand side. That's Mike W or VA3 MW, Mike Walker from Flex Radio. Here is Dave W02X. He's got a really cool dashboard, and I'm going to show you some how to get that graphic in there, or give you some pointers on that graphic on the rotator control. And that map is clickable. Like, you just click the map. Like, if you want to talk to North Korea, you just click North Korea, and it'll point that way. But I don't know if you'll actually contact them though. You can point your rotator there or your beam there, but I don't think you're getting anything out of it. So he's got a lot of things going on, but he's got the Power Genius, Tuner Genius. He's got his rotator here, kind of over in the right-hand side. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but over on the right-hand side, he's got that power switch where he turns everything off and on, and then some gauges over there, and obviously the flex in the bottom. Here is a contest station, W7GES, with 2 towers, and you can see the 2 rotators, and then some presets below, and then also some, on the left-hand side, some power switches to turn things on and off, and then some meters on the right-hand side. Over in the top left is propagation reports, so you can pull in some things, some graphics on websites. You got a geochron that you can pull in, weather forecast. Down on the lower left-hand corner is a bunch of flows that I wrote to aggregate DX clusters. You wouldn't believe how many. Whenever you start comparing DX clusters, you figure out real fast that not every single DX cluster is the same, and a lot of them have spots that others don't. So I wrote an aggregator to make sure that I got all of the information. Information is key. And then in the bottom right-hand corner is another flow that I created for POTA. So it maps out all of the POTA stations that are on the air and kind of puts them on a map, and then also gives some stats around POTA if you're into POTA. Here is a dynamic RBN map that I wrote, and so it skims the cluster, and then you put a call sign in, and if that call sign comes across the cluster, it does a reverse lookup of who got spotted, or your call sign, and then who spotted you, and then spots those locations on a map on where you were heard. It's a cool thing during contests to see where you're being heard. This is another flow, or a bunch of flows that I wrote for a contest dashboard. So basically, while you're contesting, it takes real-time information from N1MM and some other loggers and puts it into some really cool stats. So it maps out where your contacts are being, or where you're working contacts from. It has scores, got some graphs. This upper right-hand dashboard is a contest within a contest. So, if you're doing a multi-op and you've got, 6 people that are running that multi-op, why can't you have a contest within the multi-op to see, who is doing better than somebody else, and maybe that might force somebody to get their butt in the chair. So let's wrote that, and then some other stats. The lower right-hand corner is the online scoreboard. Takes information from the online scoreboard and displays it. I'm actually going to redo that. That's an old screen, but takes information and puts it in the dashboard. So let's talk about this Digital Loggers web relay switch. This is, if you're going to start out in Node-RED and you want to interface a piece of equipment, I would suggest this is probably your first piece of equipment that you want to buy. It's about $180, and there's a ton of flows. I think there's like 5 flows on the Groups IO under the files location where you can download and kind of mess around with it. The flow is up above the picture of the device. It basically queries the device every 3 seconds to figure out what state these what state the relays are in. and then it just reports back to a dashboard. And this is what a sample dashboard looks like on the right-hand side. Again, there's 8 plugs here that are remotely switched, and then these 2 on the right-hand side that are grouped together, those are always on. So you could plug your Raspberry Pi in there or something, maybe a light that you don't want to turn off. Second piece of equipment might be this Km-Tronics Web Relay. Talked about that. It's Ethernet based, runs on 12 volts, gives you 8 relays on, off, normally open, normally closed. It's about $90 on the Km-Tronics website. It's got a couple of flows. This is what the flow looks like. Again, starts off with a timestamp node, and that basically every 3 seconds it restarts the flow, and it goes out and queries what the state of the web relays or the relays are in, and reports back through this big if then else statement. And then it goes and says, all right, do you want to turn on and off based on a switch here, and then reports it back to the dashboard. So looks exactly like the digital loggers, but you can make these look as whatever you want to, as long as it's a button. So this is just a button that you press to turn it on or turn it off. And then whenever you press it, whenever it's on, it turns green. Whenever it's off, it turns red. A couple more here. These are Raspberry Pi monitors. You can see gauges over here. You can see there's a graph that you can put in. Then you've got buttons that you can reboot the Pi and shut it down. All of these dashboard nodes are controlled by this flow. And again, all of these flows are on the files page, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then also, the cool thing about this device is it's got some smarts built in that if your internet goes down, it's got an auto ping inside of it. So if it does not ping, like let's say Google or Yahoo or whatever device you want to ping outside of your home, let's say your router is in port number 1. If it doesn't get a reply from Google in, let's say, 5 minutes, you can program this device to automatically reboot that relay and reboot your router for your house or your remote station or whatever you're trying to reboot. So it's got like a little internet monitor inside of it. Stream Decks. Let me take a drink of water here. Stream Decks. If you don't have a Stream Deck, you should go out and buy one. These things are awesome. So I've got one here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. So I've got one here. It is a 6, 15, or 24 button, basically hotkey device. And every single one of the buttons that you see, the pressable buttons that you see, is a user-defined automated LED screen that can change state. So it's a little bitty monitor, little bitty TV in the Stream Deck. So these buttons can be programmed for one or many actions, and basically they're hotkeys, right? So you can bring up the program and say, whenever I press the top left-hand button that says FT8, I want all of my rigs and everything. Let's say it says FT8 20 meters. One button press will switch all of your devices and make sure all of your things are configured for FT8 on 20 meters. Same thing with, you can make it for rotor control, where all you have to do is just press the button and your rotator, rotates your antenna wherever you need to. And I'm going to show you how that's done. if you know anything about REST commands and WebSockets, that's what it uses to command the devices. And it's got layers of pages, so it's not limited to like 6 or 15 buttons. You can do layers upon layers upon layers. So, and there's a lot of examples out there on this Elgato Stream Deck. So if you don't have one and you're looking for just, some quick automation, you don't have to use it with Node-RED, but it does integrate really well with Node-RED. So that's why I wanted to mention it. So let's go through some examples of the Stream Deck because it's so cool. So the left-hand side is the programming interface. You can see that it's got some hot buttons there to, launch Chrome, launch, some Adobe stuff. You can do some manual configuration at the bottom. It's not limited to this to say, hey, what do you want to do whenever N1MM is in focus? Whenever I press this button, what does it do? And we know all N1MM has got a ton of hotkeys that you can use. You can configure it to communicate to N1MM and send it a hotkey. So on the right-hand side is some example what these buttons can take a look at. The really cool one is this one. So this is Dave, W0TLM. Now on the left-hand side, you can see he's got an FT8 button down there on the lower 3 over and 4 down. Whenever he hits the FT8 button, it brings up a second screen, and he's got all of his presets here. And if he wants to go to 20 meters FT8, all he has to do is hit that 20 meters 14.074, and everything will be configured in his shack to start communicating on FT8. It's really cool. Some other Stream Deck examples, give it some band information, again, mode information, and then you can compound these hotkeys. So you can say 15 meters upper sideband. Some people have done some really cool things with it. I just threw this in because I don't know if anybody has got a Flex in here, but I do remote operating, and I take my Stream Deck with my laptop here, and I run FR Stack. That's an add-on with the Flex software that talks to the Flex software, and I can literally control my whole shack through the Stream Deck, through the laptop, through the internet, into Node-RED, and have complete control of all of my devices anywhere in the world in my shack. So I think that's pretty cool. So this Elgato Stream, or this foot pedal, is really cool. They just came out with this like a couple months ago, and it's got 3 individual pedals that you can put underneath your table. So I think of whenever I'm contesting, I've got my fingers on the home row, right, on the keyboard, and I'm waiting for that call to come in. And I'm looking at my Node-RED screen that's got the status of all of my devices. I'm concentrating on N1MM. But the only thing below me is my push to talk whenever I'm doing single sideband contests. Well, I got another foot free, right? So what I've programmed my foot pedal to do is the middle one is push to talk, but I've got toggle N1MM focus and transmit focus on the outer 2, so I go back and forth. So my fingers never leave the home row. That's usually the tilde key and the break key. Well, I can literally like do those with my feet and keep my fingers on my home row for contesting. So something I just wanted to throw out there that they created, and that is controllable and programmable by the Stream Deck software. So once you get a Stream Deck, you're kind of into the system, and all of that programming is done through that programming interface. So let's get into what is a node. I'm going to go through these pretty quick. So these are some 4 typical nodes that you might see and program with. You got an inject node, which basically starts a flow, a debug node, which is your friend. You always want to use some debug nodes, and all the time, every time that we start to troubleshoot someone's flow that they've got an issue with, what do we start with? We start with debug nodes and put them on all the nodes to figure out what's the information coming out of those nodes, and is it correct? A switch node is basically just a big if then else statement. So if this, then that. If not, do something else. And then a change node. So we can change a value. Maybe we want to change an icon color to red to green based on a state change. Every single node has got configuration screens, and you can see the 4 configuration screens. I'm looking at the screen, and maybe it's a little washed out, but every node has got a configuration screen where you can configure what that node does. Whenever information comes into the node, it does some work, and it gets shot out the other side of the node with that information or the things that you tried to change with it. Function nodes that I just showed you here are not to be confused with dashboard nodes. Dashboard nodes are what display things on a dashboard, okay? Kind of telling you stuff that I wish people would have told me whenever I was starting out, because I was trying to figure out some of this stuff and like, I don't understand how this stuff works. You know, can somebody give me a cliff notes? So I'm trying to give you guys a cliff notes to get you started. Dashboard nodes are what actually display things on a dashboard, and you can configure those dashboard nodes to be as big as you want, as small as you want, what they say. So, and again, every single dashboard node has got some configuration screens. It's got a size. How big do you want that dashboard button to be? Do you want to have it to display a tooltip? What color do you want it to be? What background do you want it to be? Whenever you click that button, what do you want it to do? So all of these things are configurable. Don't let it scare you off, because first, start slow. You want to crawl, then you want to walk, then you want to run. So I wouldn't suggest running on your first day of Node-RED unless you're an advanced programmer. But get into some of the dashboard nodes and configure them and get them, start playing around. Start small and start playing around with some of those dashboard nodes and how they differ from function nodes. So again, a basic flow here. I just want to kind of take you through a flow to kind of get your mind working here. So over on the far left-hand side is an inject node. We're going to trigger this flow to start every second. Okay, so that's just an inject, and it just injects a piece of information to say, hey, start the flow. Then we're going to go and we're going to get some serial data, let's say from a K3. Hang on, I'm going to take a drink here. I talked all day. I had 8 hours of meetings today, and I had to run most of them. So I'm sorry, my voice is a little dry here. So that's why I'm kind of taking a lot of drink of water. All right, so serial data. Let's say you're trying to get information from your K3. Okay, so you're going to query your K3, and it's got a connection to a serial interface, and it's going to return some stuff. Probably band data, mode data, how fast the fan is spinning, how hot the board is, how many watts of output is the radio putting out. So you can take that data and you can say, you know what, I just want to break out the band and the mode data. So you basically shuck off all the rest of the stuff and just get the band and data and mode info. And then you parse that to another if then else. So the mode data goes high, and the band data goes low, and the mode data goes high. And then you can do some determinations in that if then else statement to say, all right, is the band 160 meters? Is it 80? Is it 40? Is it 20? And then once you break that out even further, then you can display the band data in a dashboard node to say, whatever you want to, however you want to display it. Same thing with the mode. Break it out through SSB, CW, or digital. You break it out even further, and then display it, let's say, in a text box on the dashboard with a dashboard node to show that mode. So that's basically a flow that you can write in a couple of minutes. And the key is to put that debug node on the output of that serial node to figure out what that K3S or that K3 is telling you and what that information is. Okay. Screen real fast, debug. Debug is your friend. Use your debug nodes all the time. If you don't know what your next step is, start putting debug nodes on flows and just taking a look at the data. Just step back. Actually, probably sleep on it, then come back the next day and to look at it with a clear mind. But debug nodes are your friend. All right, where to start? Node-RED.org is a great place to start. It's got great documentation. It's got some good forums. I would start there. The documentation is great. If you're a little bit of an inquisitive person to say, hey, this sparks my interest, that documentation is great. It's written literally at a kindergartner level that I can understand. So if I can figure this out, you can too by the documentation that they've put together. Installing Node-RED for Windows. I wouldn't suggest this, but if you do install it, there is a Windows version that you can install. Just keep in mind, whenever you reboot your computer and you restart your computer, Node-RED is not going to automatically restart. You need to start it manually. What I would suggest is installing on a Raspberry Pi. One script to install Node-RED. All you have to do is type in that script. It's on the Node-RED website. You just type that command in. It does everything else. You don't have to do anything else. I know Raspberry Pis are kind of hard to come by. Micro Center usually gets batches of 25 to 30 on the 2 gig side. And you can run, I'm running Node-RED on a Pi Zero. You know, the ones that came out 7 years ago. I'm running Node-RED on one of those. I mean, it's slow, but I'm running one of those. So if you can't find, my suggestion is, if you can't find a Raspberry Pi, go find your local teenager, your geeky teenager, and ask the teenager if they've got like 4 Pis in their junk drawer, and just grab it and install it. I guarantee you that you'll find one. I was trying to find one the other day, and I know a bunch of people that are on the Linux users group here in St. Louis, and I called him up and said, hey, I know that you've got like 500 of these in your drawer. Can I just have one? And he literally pulled out his drawer, junk drawer, and he had like 4 Pis in there. And I'm just like, you understand that you could probably sell these for $100 a pop. So there's Pis to be had. You just need to go where the Pis are at. Here are the main screens in Node-RED. So now we're getting to the meat and potatoes here. So I'm going to try and go through these kind of fast here. Once you get Node-RED up and running, it runs on port 1880. On your left-hand side is the workspace. That's where you do your programming. On the right-hand side, it's the same address as your Pi. So you're gonna, bring up a website like you're gonna connect to the Pi on port 1880 on your local computer. But then the dashboard is in /UI. So that's what gets a lot of people on their first attempt on like, where's the dashboard? I don't understand where the dashboard's at. So you just have to do /UI for user interface, and that's where the dashboard's at. The workspace is where you program. The dashboard is where you control. So let's talk about the workspace for a little bit. Up there in the top, you've got tabs, so you can separate flows. You can have many flows on a tab. I usually separate big chunks of flows in different tabs that do different things. On your extreme left-hand side is where your palette is at, so that's where all the nodes lie and get installed in. So you can go out to the internet and install all of these nodes that people have programmed over the years to do fancy things and things that you're trying to do. Let's say you're trying to cut a word in half. There's a string node that you can install from the internet to cut a word in half. So there's kind of nodes to do anything. You got the main workspace that is there in the middle, and then a sidebar, which has got a bunch of different side menus, and we're going to go over the side menus real quick. And then the magical button of all is in the upper right-hand corner. That's your deploy button. After you've gotten all of your nodes configured on what you think it's going to do, you hit the deploy button, and that's basically what compiles your program to put it to make it go live. So now I'm in that sidebar menus. So you can see it's pointing to those little icons in the upper right-hand corner. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. Working left from right, we got project info. So if you display this on GitHub or send this to GitHub, which is a software repository, you can get information about the project there. Help button will get you a lot of information about the help. Git repository, so that will actually connect to the Git repository and upload or download your files. Your debug, so after you put some debug nodes on your flow, you'll go into the debug menu, and that's where all of the debug information will show up at. Dashboard layout, that's where you configure your dashboard on how big it is, where things are located at. That's where you configure all the dashboard stuff. Configuration node settings and global or local flow and global variables, I really don't spend that much time into. Those are more advanced stuff, but it's just like, let's say you connect to a SQL database. That is going to be stored in the node, but it's also going to be stored in the configuration node settings. And I'm not really going to go into variables, but if you want to have some variables that span across flows, you can do that. Again, function nodes and dashboard nodes. Function nodes are the colorful nodes. Dashboard nodes are always in that teal. So just make sure you don't confuse those. And also, whenever you create a flow, usually it always dumps into a dashboard node to display some type of information. So just keep that in mind. All right. So in the extreme upper right-hand corner, you've got that hamburger menu, those 3 lines there. So if you click on those 3 lines, this is where you import flows. So let's say Bob made a flow for your K3 and you want to import it. And you've got a blank palette, right? You've got a blank workspace. The first thing you want to do is hit that hamburger menu and come down here to import. And that's where you're going to import the file that's going to be imported into your Node-RED system, and hopefully you can just configure a few things, and it's going to look like what Bob configured on his Node-RED system. So a lot of people ask, well, how do I import stuff? This is how you import things that people have exported, and you want to import their flows. Just go to the import. If you go to manage palette, I talked about these flows on the left-hand side and actually on the right-hand side too, but mostly on the left-hand side. You see all those flows like countdown and trigger and gate and string. All of those are flows that somebody on the internet has put out there that has put them in the central repository, and I have installed them through that manage palette menu bar or menu selection. So whenever you click on manage palette, a new window pops up, and I just typed in Morse code here. Somebody created a node to do Morse code. So you can hit see it's got install in the lower right-hand corner. You hit install, and it installs that node into your palette, and then you're able to use it in your flows. Real fast with tabs and groups. This is more dashboard stuff layout. And then this is where I tell everyone I'm kind of getting in the weeds here, but if you want to, I can download or send you this presentation. If you want, just email me, because I'm probably going to go over this pretty fast, but hopefully this will stick somehow, and you can go back into the presentation and be like, oh, okay, I understand. So whenever you've got your dashboard up, you've got a bunch of tabs that you can dashboard screens. So remember back whenever I had that contesting dashboard, it had those 4 screens on the screen. Every single one of those is a different tab, and it has a bunch of dashboard nodes that display stuff in them. Well, to configure those tabs, you come into the dashboard layout and you configure what your top level tabs are at, or what they're called. And then inside those tabs, you put those dashboard nodes into groups, and then you make sure that the groups are in the format and the layout that you want. And the tab, the group, and the layout buttons are squared there in the different colors. And I'll show you an example. So I've got a dashboard screen here, and you can see the first tab up there is called E-Layer Command and Control. I don't know if you can see that on the screen and how big it is, but trust me on it. So that first tab is called E-Layer Command and Control. Well, if you go up to the upper left-hand corner, what's that first name? E-Layer Command and Control. If you click that hamburger menu in the upper left-hand corner, it's going to drop down a bunch of different tabs that are named Radio Shack B or Radio B Shack Control, DX Cluster, FR Stack, Slides, and Camera Feed. So you're going to see all of that stuff whenever you hit that hamburger menu. And the groups are underneath or nested underneath each one of those tabs. Again, another example, probably overkill here, but you can see E-Layer Command and Control, layer or Radio B Shack Control, DX Cluster. So all of those line up. Those are tabs. All of those line up for the different dashboards. Then in each tab, you make groups. And that's where you put the dashboard nodes, right? So you had a text dashboard node, you had a gauge, you had a button, you had all of these different things. How do you actually put them in the dashboard? This is how you put them in the dashboard. You associate that dashboard node with a group, which that group is associated with a tab, right? Because it's got a dashboard screen on it. And this is where this is the GUI interface where you configure all of those dashboard nodes to make it look pretty. Okay. And here's a perfect example of how you can kind of configure this GUI to make it look like you want it on the dashboard. So this, I know you can't probably see my cursor here, but you've got CPU temperature. So you've got a group called Raspberry Pi Status and Control. It's got a width of 6 units. Each one of these gauge dashboard nodes is 3 units across, and it's 3 units down. Whenever I look at these groups, CPU temperature gauge dashboard node, memory used dashboard node, and it's in this upper right hand and left hand corner, this is what it looks like on the dashboard. Same thing with disk space and CPU. Then I've got a chart dashboard node that I put in here. It's 1, 2, 3. Well, it's 6. It's 6 across because we made this the width 6, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4 down, and it looks like that. And then you've got the buttons on the reboot and the shutdown. So this is how you configure the dashboards to make them look pretty. Same thing with the E-Layer weather. All right, we talked about that rotator. This is an SVG elements. If you want to learn more about SVG elements, take a look at Google. There is a program that you can download to make these audible, and make them interactive. How about that? So whenever I click on that rotator, it's going to basically move my beam, and it's going to shoot somewhere else based on where I click on the map. You don't have to make it clickable. You can just keep it as is and make your left, right, and brake as buttons. But a lot of people like to click and point and get their rotator moving just by the click of the mouse. One of the first things that you should do after you install Node-RED is those dashboard nodes that I showed you. Those are not automatically installed by default. Go to Manage Palette, like where you install all of those nodes, or install nodes that are configured by people on the internet, and put in that repository. Go out there and take a click on the install, just like you would any other node, but type in dashboard, and that's where you're going to get all of those teal based nodes that you can start building dashboards with. That's often a missed thing on new users. Resources, nodered.org. Node-RED's got a YouTube page. It's okay. It's not the best. Opto Video has got a really good, they're industrial Ethernet and automation company, but they make a lot of control interfaces with Node-RED. They've got a lot of good information. And then also there's a Node-RED on Reddit. If you're into Reddit, But the holy grail is the groups IO for Node-RED for ham radios. 1,500 people. We've got people that there's at least 3 or 4 topics that get discussed every single day. So if you have any questions whatsoever, go to that groups IO and join that groups IO. Talked about the files for people that have programmed stuff already to share. Once you join the groups IO group, you can click on the files link there. I got it highlighted in red, and you can search for, Elecraft, Yaesu, Kenwood, and or your rotators or your amplifiers, and see if anybody has created a flow first before you start diving into making a flow on your own. Here is just a splattering of all of the things that I could find that had flows already programmed for them. So if you see something that is on this list, it's in the file section. I know that I missed a bunch because some of them are not named that great. But yeah, here's the list that I could find. And what's next? So join the groups IO mailing list. That'll get you 50%, and then get it up and running. Just play around with it. Install additional nodes on the palette, configure and deploy your first flow. Start small, right? So don't jump into this face first, crawl, walk, run. Make sure that you start, slow, load it, start playing around with the flows, start playing around with the nodes, connect the nodes together, get some debug nodes on them. Just play around with them to see what they do and get familiar with what's going on. And then if you're really lost and you want to get even more lost, I've got a YouTube series of how to get everything up and running. There's a playlist here that I basically start you from scratch on, what is a Raspberry Pi and how do I get an image on a Raspberry Pi? And I walk you through the whole thing to getting Node-RED up and running and installing your first flow, and basically getting that Digital Loggers Web Switch Pro up and running. So if you want to check that out, I think that's a decent, it's a little dry, maybe kind of like this presentation, but it'll get you it'll get you up and running. And that is it. I don't know if you, how are we doing on time? Are we okay on time?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. I think this is a 5-minute video. Let's see if you can hear the audio here. Can you hear that audio?
No.
Okay.
Share your audio.
Yeah, I got to share my audio. Yeah, that's right. Good. Let's see. Hang on. Everyone hang on. I think I got to stop sharing here. Yeesh, how do I even stop this? Yeah. Well, I changed my screen here, and then where is my? I'm not even sure how to get back here.
One of your other screens.
Ah, yes, you're correct. Good call there. Let's see. Share sound. Yeah. Right, let's try that. Let's see. Let's go slideshow.
Hi all, it's
How about that?
W0TLM. Just doing a little demonstration of what I've been doing with Node-RED. A couple of things I've been doing is just optimizing some of my flows for Node-RED. Up in the top we have the Flex Radio flow, Power Genius, Tuner Genius, Antenna Genius, the Rotor flow, the DLI web switch, turn equipment on and off, and network status. I've also been integrating into this the Stream Deck, and that's what I want to show in this video today. So right now we have the Smart SDR clients up on 20 meters, and the M model radios on 40 meters right now. So my Stream Deck here the way I have it set up, the start button launches all my programs, and it shows the current active frequency, which is 7160. Antenna A, I have a 2x8 antenna switch, so that's set on 40 meters for my G5 RV. And antenna B, which is set to Smart SDR, is on the Yagi right now. And to the right, I have pre-programmed rotor control buttons. Right now, I'm pointing up towards Europe. So if I want to turn around and hit the button to go to Africa, I can hit the button and the rotor turns. And you see it update on the map here, up on the Node-RED dashboard. Then I also have pre-programmed buttons to turn equipment on and off. So if I take outlet 6 and push it, it turns outlet 6 on. If I hit it again, it turns outlet 6 off. The buttons here are for my flex tuner. If I hit the tune button, it'll initiate a tune sequence. So again, I'll hit the tune button and it tunes. The tuner operates standby. You can put it to standby, shows tuner standby, tuner operate, and then tuner radio 1 or radio 2. Right now, client 2, which is 20 meters, is the one that's active. So if I were to switch clients, it would switch and show which one is active on the tuner. The Power Genius amplifier right now is in operate. And if I hit that, if you watch up here, I hit the button, I can toggle it between standby and operate. And then also up on top, I have, again, coming down, if I want to run JT Alert, JT Alert will launch that, and also WSJTX for digital modes. FT8 brings up where I have a bunch of pre-programmed buttons for the FT8 frequencies. And then I have also a Flex 6600M button here. If I hit that button, it brings up a bunch of other buttons and folders where I can go into frequency. And from frequency, I can hit step up, step down, frequency plus, frequency minus. I can have a keypad if I want to direct enter a frequency. And bands brings up all my different bands that I have pre-programmed, that are in the radio. Modes, quick access to the modes. And DSP, slice, antenna, MOX on, MOX off. I can launch Smart SDR, CAT, and DAX manually. CWX brings up a bunch of different CWX stuff that I have programmed in right now. And so that's it. And volume settings. And then I can go to my next client and switch between the two clients. Again, these commands are using FR stack. And then the slice. Right now I'm on just one slice for each client, so there's no next slice. But this is the integration with Stream Deck and Stream Deck to Node-RED. So again, the Power Genius, the Tuner Genius are all, the Power Genius and Tuner Genius are all set up to communicate to Node-RED, and also the DLI web switch through Node-RED, and the rotor control through Node-RED. Thanks.
You're muted, Kyle.
I gotta find my mouse. There it is. So I got too many screens here. I don't know where things are at, so I'm kind of getting lost here. Anyway, that was Dave W02X showing you his shack and all the things that you can do with a Stream Deck and how you can integrate them with Node-RED. So I thought that was kind of a cool video to see, what is possible. So I think that's it. I am done. Any questions that I can probably not answer?
Hey, Kyle, this is Lauren. Go ahead, if you can send me the presentation. We've got it recorded, but if you can send me the presentation, I'll get it to the right people here for our library.
Yeah, sure. Will do. Any other questions?
If you were going to suggest just something really basic to play around, given I don't have a Raspberry Pi, but I've got a Windows computer that I can run the Node-RED server on. What would be just a real basic, simple thing to try? Where would you suggest starting?
Yeah, so we had that dilemma. Let's see if I can go back to, if you go back to my YouTube page and click on your first flow, installing nodes and importing flows to, and then also this digital loggers website, we do a bunch of turning a button on and off and what it does in the background. And we show the process of getting that up and running. And there's also a bunch of examples of turning a square a different color, or I forgot all the examples that we do. So those are some things that you can do in Node-RED without a piece of equipment. And you don't, all of these flows don't have to flow into a dashboard to control a piece of equipment. It can do something else that you can start out from scratch with. And that's what I would suggest is start your first flow and don't even connect it to a piece of equipment. Just make a text file, say yes or no, right? Or turn a button on and off, or make a gauge that goes to 1 to 100, and there's like a random node generator or a number generator that you can install, and just shoot it a bunch of numbers from 0 to 100 and watch the gauge go up and down, like this. So you can figure out how these flows work and how the dashboard works without actually even connecting it to a piece of equipment.
Would you be able to go out and retrieve, let's say, a report from PSK Reporter, for example? You were showing your DX spots, just something to go and retrieve, piece of information instead of.
Yeah, you can do stuff like that. I think the PSK Reporter thing might be a little more advanced, but there are some more basic stuff. And the cool thing is there's so many flows out there that, let's say you download a flow and it's not exactly what you're looking for. Well, hopefully you can go through and look at the logic of the flow to be like, oh, well, he is getting a picture off the internet at this location. Well, I need a picture off the internet at another location. So I'm going to change the URL to that new location and see what it does. So there's a whole bunch of examples that you can kind of work through and be like, well, it's not exactly getting me what I need, but it gets me 75%. I just need to figure out the next 25.
Good.
The key is to get support. Don't go through this alone. Go into the groups IO, make some noise, say, hey, I'm having an issue. I bet you anything, I have a day job. Dave and Al do not. So therefore they love to like sit on the groups IO and remote control into people's screens and help them sort out Node-RED stuff. So I bet you anything, Alan and Dave would be more than happy to help you get up and running. I'm volunteering them because they're not here.
That's how it works with every club.
Yeah, it's a part of the club now.
All right, well, thank you, Kyle. That was a great presentation.
Thank you.